It is more racing, more to follow for the fans and more racing for us. So once we do it in Silverstone and hopefully in 2 other Grand Prix, I'm sure we can draw a good conclusion if that's the way to go forward in the future in some races or not.
For the 2021 Formula One season, the FIA, FOM and the teams have decided to introduce sprint races, which will be a 100-kilometre sprint race on a Saturday afternoon. It's meant to spice up the race, spice up the weekend and make it a little bit more random. I think it's been a really interesting concept and a challenge for all teams. Normally on a Friday, we will have 2 one-hour practice sessions where you get plenty of time to improve the balance of the car, ensure that the cars where the drivers like it, you can try low fuel levels, high fuel levels, and get a balance in all conditions. But for the sprint race schedule, we will have just 1 hour's practice to get the car in the right place. Then we go into a 1-hour qualifying session, just as now. Saturday morning, we get another 1-hour practice session where I believe most teams will run with full fuel to get the car ready for the Sunday race. But then we will do a 100-kilometre sprint race on Saturday afternoon. From that grid position where you finish on Saturday, that'll be your place for Sunday's race.
I think it will be nice to try the sprint race format for the Grand Prix. The usual format has been, pretty standard, apart from a couple of odd weekends when there's been less practice. But apart from that, I think it will be nice to try something different, how it's going to really mix up the weekend. I guess it can go really against you or for you, but we'll find out.
From an engineering perspective, the new format does have quite an impact. One of the key things is we've just got 1 hour of running this one session, after which the car goes into parc fermé. And at that point, there's very, very little that we can change on the car. One of the big challenges is in this first hour, you've got to think about how do you want the setup to be. You've got to consider both the single lap and the long run performance. You also need to set all the cooling parameters, like the power unit cooling and the brake cooling. And if you don't get those decisions right, then it could be quite a painful weekend, because from that point onwards, as you go into qualifying, the car is pretty much fixed, and those decisions have got to carry through the qualifying session itself and the sprint race and the main race.
The biggest challenge for the teams, for sure, for the engineering is finding a balance for the driver, but also for the mechanics. We have much shorter time to work on the car. Straight after qualifying on a Friday, the car will go into parc fermé. We'll have 3.5 hours where we can work on the car, but some of this time will be spent with the FIA where the car's being checked for legality. We'll get the car back on Saturday morning prior to practice 2. We will have another 3 hours. Generally, we have 7.5 to 8 hours on a Friday evening, so you can see it's going to be quite compressed and an awful lot of work for the guys.
Less practice means you either find the flow and the good setup quickly or you don't. So I feel like there can be a bit more variability in terms of the order in qualifying between teams, between drivers. It is more racing, more to follow for the fans and more racing for us. So once we do it in Silverstone and hopefully in 2 other Grand Prix, I'm sure we can draw a good conclusion if that's the way to go forward in the future in some races or not.
I think this new format's going to be very interesting. A lot's going to depend on what circuits they decide to use. Silverstone, it's hard to know where we're going to end up. Moving forward, depending on what tracks they use, it could be quite exciting. It's not something you'd want to use at Monaco because there's not a great deal of overtaking. But other tracks like your Spas, your Monzas, the ones where you can get a good draft on the straight, then that could be a real good concept.
The new schedule does have quite an impact on how we work at the track and how we work with the drivers. It's a very different race weekend, and we've really had to look at the whole thing afresh and consider how we schedule the analysis work that we do around it, the simulation work that we do leading up to it, the work on the cars when we're actually going to get that work fitted in, and again, one of the key points of how do we make sure we've got that spec right in such a short space of time, just with that single FP1 session before qualifying, to make sure that we've got as much performance on the car going into the race as possible. In reality, after the first sprint qualifying event in Silverstone, we'll sit down and discuss how it's gone, what worked well, what didn't work. We can involve the drivers in those decisions so that with the subsequent events, we can make sure we're as best prepared as possible.
Qualifying is going to be maybe slightly more unexpected. Whoever finds the good setup quickly will be a step ahead, and as a driver who finds the flow the quickest will be in good form in qualifying. And in the sprint race, it's another risk. It is always a race start, and first lap is a risk in terms of collisions and losing or gaining places. You can lose it all in sprint race. If you crash out of sprint race, you're going to start last for the Grand Prix, and it's going to make your Sunday really tricky. So I think it can really swing either way.